now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Using legislation to make an illegal act legal.
There are, I don't know how many, but there are still reports being received of persons who have no connection to these islands who purport to practice Cayman law overseas. There is nothing we can do about it.
The large Georgetown firms, and we know that they have, to this day, partners listed as practicing Cayman law who never have had a practice certificate issued by the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
And the partners in Cayman are complicit in that. And when you conspire to commit an offense in this jurisdiction, even if the offense is partly committed overseas, that's still a criminal offense.
It has been illegal, and we are now legitimizing an illegal activity.
Oh, well, we need to fix this overseas practice problem.
We are officers of the law. That must mean something, OC. This behavior where we send the average little kid to jail for if he has a spliff, and look at the behavior at those who run this country.
And we should be proud of this instead of talking it down on the talk shows, beating down our own image and jurisdiction while claiming to fly the Cayman flag like some kind of patriot.
I'm not sidetracking from this legal services bill, but then it creates so much more of conflicts of interest and issues of accountability and the lack thereof that you can go back and indemnify yourselves and so forth for past actions.
So when the world sees that, what do you think that does for our credibility on the global playing field?
Exactly. No wonder the EU will come down on us.
Who's trying to cause damage to the financial services industry? That affects us all.
God.
Well, we don't need a controller now. We need to stop them because it's illegal. Prosecute them before the courts.
They know what they told me, that they believe what they're doing is illegal under Section 10 of the current law. But everybody's turning a blind eye.
And we have turned a blind eye to that.
Despite all the motions that the government may bring to try to give them retroactive indemnity, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work.
Good morning, folks. How is everyone? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I thought it was important this morning to start off the show with that legal services bill. We will continue to play that throughout so that you guys can get a little glimpse and understand how there are times when the government will go to great lengths to legalize something. In this case, it obviously impacts the legal services area. An act that is illegal, they will go ahead and change legislation in order to make it legal. Isn't that amazing? People, wake up every single day and they do things, whether inadvertently or not, because there's a misunderstanding in the law. But here we have persons who would be well versed in the law as attorneys, and they're actually breaching the law, practicing Cayman Islands law overseas with no Cayman issued legal practice certificate. And yet this government is prepared to legalize their actions, and they're doing it, trust me, by way of the passage of the legal services bill. So I wanted that one tidbit in terms of the legal services bill to really, really sink in as soon as possible, because the more you know and the better you understand what you're dealing with in terms of the legislative structure, your parliament, your MPs, a lot of your representatives, the better. This is a stark reality of what it is that we're dealing with. So someone actually messaged in relation to this legal services bill. Now, as you guys remember, we had Mr. Sammy Jackson, who's a long-standing member of the legal fraternity, on the show. It was last week, Friday. And if you missed that show, be reminded that you can go back to the website. You can go back to, sometimes it's a little bit tricky trying to find things on Facebook, I find, after it goes down a bit. But on the website, just go under the category of the Cold Hard Truth, and you'll be able to see it there, as well as obviously it's on Facebook. And you can go under the video tab. That's the easiest way to do it, because then you'll only see videos and you will be able to see the videos in relation to this. Now, someone sent me a message a few days ago and they said, just give me 1 second here. They said that SILPA, which is this Cayman Islands Legal Practitioners Association, I think that's what it stands for, are purporting and have been for some time to be the entity issuing the Cayman Islands practicing certificates. Now, we saw this and we discussed this briefly when Mr. Sammy was on the show with us on Friday. And it's interesting because SILPA is a body of, I'm guessing a nonprofit body of attorneys, mostly from the larger firms, who are trying to hold each other accountable. So they have issued notices and fines to other members of the legal fraternity because a subcommittee of SILPA has been issued or permitted a contract by the Cayman Islands government, by the way. So you're seeing MLAs, MPs, and I want to make it very clear, I'm talking about the unity government here, folks. The opposition is sitting back, ineffective at this point, in the sense that there's not much that they can do. But the Alden's government, his unity government, has given them a contract that permits them to actually fine other and allegedly hold accountable other law firms for breaches in the law, when they themselves are breaching the law, as that video just demonstrated, by having partners and other lawyers in their firm practice at their overseas locations with no Cayman Islands practicing certificate. Not only do they not have no Cayman Islands practicing certificate, but the partners here obviously know that. But the same body then has the audacity to try to hold other smaller law firms one-man operations like Mr. Sammy Jackson, like Mr. Alric Lindsay, and others accountable for, oh, we need to come in and look at your records, conflict of interest much? And if you don't allow us to do so, we're going to issue a fine of $10,000, $50,000, or whatever. So folks, you got to wake up. I always say, if the government has the audacity to go after people who are higher up the chain, as it will, lawyers, doctors, Caymanian lawyers, Caymanian doctors, Caymanian accountants, who's going to be next? Why do you think they would care about any of us, right? Because honestly, we don't have the resources. Mr. Sammy, Oren Marin, these guys are suing the government, as well as Alric Lindsay. They do have a lawsuit, various lawsuits actually, and there's some others as well. Oh gosh, what are their names? Etienne Blake, like some of them, some of those partners are also suing the government. But yeah, I think it's amazing that, you know, they're going to go after, they're going to abuse and misuse and twist and misinterpret the law and go after lawyers, right? And now they want to pass legislation to try to retroactively legalize some of their actions. It's mind-boggling, but what is even more mind-boggling is the point I'm making here, is if they go after them, we have no hope in hell that they will not undermine us as kind of average people in the community. They will do it at every single turn that they can. So beware, folks, beware. So the bill, to the best of my knowledge, is moving forward. It's now, someone has just sent me confirmation. I believe it's past the second reading and it's at the committee stage. And it says the Legal Services Bill 2020. There are other things in relation to that are problematic. So folks, you've got to be paying attention here. Let me just see some of your messages. Good morning, Melita. Yes, I am sounding a little bit better. I've got my morning tea, morning water. Hi, Olivia. Thank you so much for tuning in. Beautiful Cassidy says, Grand Rising CMR, blessed morning to all. Yes, and thank you so much. I know a lot of you are have been messaging me and are very pleased with the outcome of the court's decision yesterday. Listen, I'm sure there's a few nuggets out there who would have been happy for me to be waking up in Northward this morning, but thank God that's not the case. I got up this morning and was able to wake up and hug my 4-year-old, and I couldn't imagine having a day without her. So thank you so much, Brandon. Good morning to you, Anne Marie. Johan, hashtag free Sandra Hill. It would be Johan, no longer Katron. Thank you very much. Beulah Walton, thank you, my love, for tuning in. Melita's here for it as well. Larry from New York, probably freezing his butt off this morning, but he's tuned in nonetheless. And Flashpoint says, the fox is guarding the hen house. And this is an appropriate terminology for exactly what is going on, Flashpoint. It is amazing that the government has not thought this through to any large extent, or they think that this is okay and that it would be acceptable. I mean, it really is astonishing, to be quite frank. Johan says that the bill has not yet been passed. It's past the first reading stage. There are some 75 amendments filed by Arden, Chris, and Ezard as well. It is now going to the committee stage where amendments to the bill introduced before it becomes law, etc. It's going through the legislative process, but far from being passed yet. So my question is, if it goes through the, if it's now at the committee stage, does that mean that there's any way to stop it? Because the legislators have basically said, you know, they're going to vote in favor of it for it to get to the committee stage. Can anyone, Johan, at this stage, this is a legislative, a parliamentary question, can anyone kill the bill at this stage other than, I guess, if Alden's own government, I don't even know if they have the power at this stage to retract it. Is that still possible? That's what I would like to know. Anna says government always wins. No, Anna, they do not always win. This is where I think as voters in this country, we need to change the dialogue and change our thinking about who our government is, first of all, see them for what they really are, and what we can and can't do about them. Listen, government is working for the people. They're supposed to be accountable to us because we vote them in. And they should be listening to us. And they don't always win. There have been times in recent history, such as with CPR, where they have been legally challenged and they have been forced to the brink of falling off because they've recognized that the people do have power. The people have the resources to, hire attorneys to get together and think for themselves and to actually legally challenge the government, thereby either stopping the government entirely or at least delaying them significantly where they're going to be ineffective. CPR lost the overall war, but they won some really important battles along the way that I think were significant for a number of different reasons. And it allowed the people in this country to understand, Anna, that the government can't just run you over or run us over as a people and think that there will be no consequences. That is one of the reasons why they are also trying to change another piece of legislation in relation to the court system, where they want to dictate and control, under what circumstances you can even bring a piece of judicial review, like a judicial review action against the government. They're trying to make it much more difficult for you to be able to do so and erode those protections. I want people to listen to me. If this government can do those sorts of things to us, the people, what do you think they will not do? Like, seriously, what do you think? They will stop at nothing to have their way. And so I do believe that it is really, really important for us to, stay focused on the ball. And Atlas says here, one second, Carrie, I'm going to discuss that in just a second. So Atlas says here that we hire the government and we fire the government. This is how the people need to start thinking. The government is accountable to us, or they should be held accountable to us. And if we don't allow our voices to be heard, then what is the point? One way in which we can deal with them is every 4 years. It's simple. That is the best way. It's much more difficult in between 4 years. As you can see with Mr. McKeeva Bush, he sits back and assaults a woman 3 times in the equivalent of some 20 minutes and basically chokes her out, pulls her hair, hits her in the face. And legislators sit back and say that there's nothing that they can do. There is nothing that they can do. And the people feel helpless because, as the protests you saw on Friday said, we are hoping that our legislators will be the ones to push it forward. Ezra Miller has done his best. And folks, my apologies. I'm just deleting that photo. Ezra Miller has done his best. And what I would like to say, opposition members also supported his motion by and large. What I would like to say is every single member in the Legislative Assembly right now who did not support the motion, and in fact, Barbara Connolly would not even allow it to be heard. She wouldn't even allow the motion to be voted on. She wouldn't allow it to be on the floor of the then Legislative Assembly. We have got to be prepared to hold these people accountable. Now, I'm all for female power and for women, but I do not believe in electing a person just because she's a woman. I believe in elected people who are qualified to get the job done. Now, do I believe that we have qualified women out there who would make excellent representatives in this country? 100%. They're not all making themselves available for public office. Teresa Lewis Pickren, are you listening? You got to throw your hat back in the ring. Now, I know John, and you're probably going to run in that area again. And he has the power to buy off a lot of votes by throwing concerts and holding parties. And the next 4 years, the people of Bordentown, whatever area Bordentown he's in,
I'll have to look up his jurisdiction, to be honest. But, you know, at the end of the day, he does nothing else for the people. He supports his one or two little, what's his name? John Seymour. Let's see if we can remember. He's Town. Is it East? But at the end of the day, folks, what has he done? What has John done for you, the people, even in his constituency? This man could not even hold his own during the pandemic and say anything sensible. Yes, it was nice to have someone reading a Bible verse. Okay. And can we expect a little bit more than that from our legislative officials? If he wants to be a minister of religion, there's lots of those available. And I understand it's a very lucrative position. So we can help him. We can push him in that direction. But as Minister of Health, Town East, what has John done for the people of this country? Honestly. His prayers were nice, but I can read my own Bible and I can find someone who can read better than him to read verses and not butcher other languages. And to be quite frank, if that's all you're bringing to the table as Minister of Health, that is simply not enough. Let's take a look at some other members of the now Parliament. And folks, this conversation is very organic. I was not even going to talk about all this stuff today, but I saw this video of the legal services bill and I wanted to share it. And so then this begins in my mind to lead into, why do we keep electing donkeys, literally, to be in the Legislative Assembly? Thank you, Anna, for the vote of confidence. But I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I can do so much more from where I sit to hold these guys accountable. Look at how impotent other members of the LA are, the opposition. What are they doing? I guess they do the best they can. But the second we put something on Cayman Mall Road, all of a sudden, things start to happen. Action starts to, things are agitated. There's action that's going to take place. And I can't tell you enough how important that role is. I mean, hats off to the judge yesterday for, in his decision, acknowledging the important role that CMR has in this community. And he was able to glean a better idea. That never came out during the trial because, unfortunately, as I said before, my lawyer really sucked and he didn't allow the judge to understand much of anything from our perspective. The DPP dominated the trial, but through the sentencing hearing where I represented myself and provided the judge at least 65 reference letters, he was able to get a better understanding of what CMR does in this community. And he says we are providing a useful service to the community. And that useful service includes really breaking down for the viewers and listeners in this program, the cold hard truth, what your MPs have been up to and holding them accountable. Soon I'm going to have a nugget of information and update on a story that we recently carried. And that will allow you guys to understand the power of what we are dealing with and the power of this platform, and by extension, the power of your voices. So, Barbara and Tara Rivers, they have not spoken a single word against violence in this community and specific to gender-based violence. Now, Chris Saunders came out last week on Friday, and Chris said, listen, he obviously tried to support Mr. Ezra's motion It didn't go anywhere, unfortunately, because there was not enough support for it. However, he is of the opinion that any violence against a woman should be something that we all stand against. And as a father, a brother, Chris does have sisters. As a son, he's got a mother. This is not something that he can tolerate and sit back and just accept. All right. That sounds good to me. Why have we not heard this same message from every other member of the Legislative Assembly, in particular, the government? Why? Why have we not heard from Barbara Connolly, a woman who has at least, I think, one daughter? I think she's also grandmother of a daughter. She is a woman herself who would have grown up in an era where it was probably more acceptable for men to be abusive towards women. I'm not saying that she has been a victim. I'm just saying that, the older you are, the more likely you are to know of the realities of living in a society that did not give women the right to even legally almost, to not be the victims of domestic abuse. Barbara should understand this. Juliana O'Connor Connolly falls in that exact same age group as Barbara. I don't think they're probably far off in age. She should understand this as well. Tara Rivers, on the other hand, who is way younger, should be leading the charge as a young woman in this community. No tolerance whatsoever for violence against women in our communities, or any type of violence, because I certainly wouldn't be advocating violence against men or children or anybody else. And yet they sit there every day and they rub shoulders with the Speaker of the House. They laugh in his face, shake his hand. And I want to make it very clear, because I've had some people say to me that Mr. Bush is so incredibly popular and well-loved by the people of this country. This isn't about that. This isn't about his likability or how well loved he is. This is about a man who has done something wrong and needs to be held accountable. And this is what someone said to me earlier in the week on WhatsApp. They said, simple, 95% of Caymanians love McKeeva Bush, and the other 5% might as well get used to it. This is the foolishness that they believe. Now, first of all, I can tell you that would be an incredible proposition. It's impossible for us to say, they didn't even spell his name right, but I won't go there. I'm going to correct it when I put this in here. It would be an impossible position for that to actually be the case, because he does not even get 95% of the votes when he was in office. So not even 95% of West Bayers love him, much less 95% of the Caymanian people. But folks, that is not the point. It doesn't matter how many people love Mr. Bush. That they totally miss the point completely. But that statement that 95% of the people love him, I think, is erroneous. And then I say to them, well, clearly that doesn't make any sense, because when people go to vote, 95% of the people aren't voting for him. So that can't be the case. This is how Caymanians think, right? Foreigners have been hating on him for 10 years now for no reason. Really? I have personally protested against Mr. Bush on more than one occasion. His actions, including the mass status grants back in the early 2000s. And I can tell you without fear of contradiction that I actually have nothing against Mr. Bush. He is charismatic. He helps people a lot. And it isn't about that. It is about, at some point, all the good that you can do. And this is something I think for anybody who lives in the public eye, trying to help their community, that if you cannot get your monsters under control, all of the good that you could do could be erased by one or two actions in your entire life. And that's the kind of situation that we're in here. We have people who have these grandiose personalities, bigger than life. And we, the people, have made them feel that because they have been in elected office for so long, that literally they are above the law and that there's nothing now that can be done about it. And a lot of our own people feel that they cannot hold these individuals accountable because of this grandioseness of their personalities. It's not right. So someone is so entrenched in the political system. This is what someone has written before to us. He is becoming intoxicated on his own exhaust fumes. He's a disease, which, like cancer, we have no easy cure for, but we've waited too long to treat it. Imagine that analogy for a second. It's horrible. Absolutely despicable. Someone is like a cancer, folks. And unfortunately, the cancer is killing the people of the Cayman Islands, not that individual. What are we going to do? Well, I don't know about West Bay and how many realistic options you will have, especially in Mr. Bush's constituency, because the only person I hear running there is Katina Anglin. And I must tell you, I wouldn't give her a vote if she was the only person running. So that's not a viable option. Leroy says not cancer, you mean coronavirus. Well, we might be able to eradicate coronavirus, but whatever analogy we want to use, Mr. Bush is well entrenched right where he is. But the current opposition are in the position they're in now because they refused. Let's make it very, very clear. During the last election, they refused to give him or to put him back in a position of power. And their refusal to do that, because they were all horse trading and negotiating, meant that Alden McLaughlin was able to broker a deal with him, gave him the position of power as Speaker of the House, and look at where we're at now. As much as I might think Mr. Bush is charismatic, I also see him in his personality for what it is. And someone who really has some serious demons and who believes that they are above the law. Right? So much so that you get another chance at redeeming yourself so late in your political career. Speaker of the House. And yet what happens? Well, you go out there and do some shenanigans again. Exactly what the opposition was saying. The opposition said, behind closed doors, we cannot put this man in a position of power, given his track record. And every time he's in a position of power, he does something to embarrass himself, to embarrass the people, or even worse. This isn't the first incident. There was the incident of the casino in Florida. But you see what happens with these situations? When the CCTV camera isn't quite clear enough, Mr. Bush is going to honk her down. Oh, it was a cultural misunderstanding. I go around patting people on the ass all the time, or grabbing somebody's ass allegedly all the time. It is a cultural misunderstanding how these things happen. Yes, she doesn't understand that culturally in the Cayman Islands, someone can assault you and grab you and it's okay. Yeah, because that's what we permit in this country. Folks, we need to get our ish together and really, really fast. We have a general election coming up. As Atlas says, we hire the government, we can fire the government. And I'm telling you, fire every single member of the government that has permitted this man to remain as Speaker of the House and who has sat down and done nothing about it. They've not even spoken out, generally speaking, about violence in our community. Fire them. Barbara Conley in her district, we've got an option. And I really hope that nobody else decides to run in Georgetown South, and I'm going to say this with all honesty, to erode the votes and allow incumbents to get back in, because that's what happens when you've got too many people running in a constituency. And in fact, let me put this out there right now. What happens politically, folks, is there are people who cannot run or who cannot win. They can run, but they know they cannot win. They might get 100 or 200 votes, if that. And they are placed in those positions as decoys to get a few votes. They're paid by people, allegedly, like the PPM, to go in there and disrupt the voting system in order for the incumbent to remain exactly where they are. And that cannot be allowed to happen. I spoke to someone yesterday who was thinking very, very carefully about running in Georgetown. That would be what, Georgetown West, where David White is. That person is very capable of getting the job done. I'm not going to say their name yet, but by next week, I'm probably going to tell you who it is. I'm encouraging that person, throw your ring in the hat. There are others who ran in that district before that I know are considering it. But again, I think some of these districts needs to be just 2 people running so that we can get a clear-cut position. Last time we had people win or lose by a handful of votes, folks. So when you've got every Tom, Dick, and Bodden and Ebanks running in the election, it doesn't really benefit trying to make some significant change. Okay, so Carrie is asking about the GoFundMe account. Those of you who've expressed an interest in helping me pay the legal fees, let me just clarify this, right? So in the Cayman Islands, we cannot have a GoFundMe account that's linked to anything locally. GoFundMe accounts have to be linked to a U.S. bank account. Obviously, I do not have a U.S. bank account. I don't live in the U.S. and I've not lived in the U.S. for many, many years. So what I would suggest, I think there are 2 options. People have contacted me directly and they've given me the donation. I will then go into court. I'm planning on going this morning to make my first payment. Hey, it's only a couple $100, but you know what? I've got 3 months to pay the $3,000. And if I go in there every day and put $100 on it here, you know, $150 on it there, we will erode that down within the 3 months to what it has to be. So I've got to make sure that I pay that within the 3 months. Otherwise, I will be going to jail. So let's, the other option, other than giving it to me directly, is you can actually go to the court, I guess. I mean, I don't see anything that would be stopping you, and making a payment directly to the court. You just have to give them, I guess, my name. And there's a cashier office there. A lot of people may not necessarily have time for that. So I would say, you know, if you'd like to make a donation, reach out to me directly. 324-1612 is the WhatsApp number. But thank you guys so much for your support. So Flashpoint says we need the ability to recall our representatives so that when they refuse to take action against the likes of domestic abusers, we can remove them. Flashpoint, there is a recall provision in the Constitution. But to activate and to trigger that is one of the hardest things in the world, apparently. They've made it so incredibly difficult that the better option at the moment is just to vote their asses out come May the 26th. Nobody was paying attention when they were doing all the constitutional reform, and we allowed them to pretty much be able to stay in the LA almost under any circumstances, which is shocking. But that's our plight, folks. So this is why we must pay attention when legislation is being drafted, when there are constitutional changes coming down the pipeline. Because if you elect power-hungry people like some of the ones that we have in there now, who refuse to come out of the Legislative Assembly, we're going to have a problem. Thank you, Mrs. Mason. I don't know what the rest of the name is. She says, thank you for getting the word out to us. We have no idea. We need more like you. Bless. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's why I've got to stay put here, folks, because you've got very few options of honesty and impartiality in the space of media. Now, let me talk about impartiality a little bit. Now, some of you are aware that both Chris Saunders and Kenneth Bryan supported me during the sentencing phase of my trial. Funny enough, the judge said that their appearance didn't really make that much of an impression on him. I think the 65 reference letters from ordinary people like yourselves was much more powerful. He actually said of Saunders, which I kind of chuckled. I'm gonna call Chris this morning and have a word with him. He said Chris's appearance, he talked more about himself than even about me. Politicians, what can I say? I mean, it did make me chuckle when the judge said that. And so, their contribution was minimal. But you know what? It still took a lot, and I want to publicly thank them. It still took a lot for them to step up and say, this is something that we believe is wrong. They believe the judgment actually was wrong. I mean, they can't tell the judge, they did tell the judge, we think you've got it wrong, but clearly that's a matter for him to decide. But at the end of the day, it still took a lot for them to take a position and say, on this issue, on this topic, there's a problem here. A lot of you have said the application of the law, and I want to thank Mr. Oh gosh, let me not butcher his name. He is an attorney here in the Cayman Islands. I'm going to show you guys this message in a second. And he has publicly posted after yesterday's verdict on his social media page something that I thought was interesting. But the point I'm making now is, despite these guys publicly supporting me, let me make it very, very clear. And they know this about me already, because even as they stood there in the stand, they said, listen, CMR is independent media. They don't sugarcoat anything. They're not about hand-holding. And they try to hold everybody accountable on an equal footing, including us. Chris himself said, I was on CMR recently. I was in the news. Kenneth Bryan has been on the news. And I know we've written stuff about Kenneth in a particular way that Kenneth didn't like or didn't care for. Folks, it's about the truth, right? Outside of the space of CMR and media, these guys might be my friends. Yes, I like them. When I put on my CMR hat and I'm here for the people of this country, it doesn't matter whether I like you or I don't like you. Honesty is what is most important. Accountability. And this goes back to the point of Mr. Bush. It doesn't matter whether I like him or not. And I can tell you, I have had conversations with Mr. Bush all 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I'd wake up and I'd see him online. I'd be like, oh, Makiva, what are you doing online? Can't you go to sleep? Are you okay? I felt sorry for him. I know his struggles when his daughter did die, how incredibly hard that was for him. He only has 2 children. As a parent, we can all sympathize with someone losing a child. And there's so many things about Mr. Bush that I do like. And then there's the cold hard truth of his personality as well. And unfortunately for him, he's got some serious demons that he can't control. Professional help would go a long, long way. Makiva, we have all been there and had issues. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's asking you to be perfect. But after being in the Legislative Assembly for almost 40 years, there is a level of behavior that we should still not be seeing from you after all of this time. And the fact that we are in 2020 and still seeing you engaging in drunken stupidness and assaulting women in this community, it is time for you to seriously retire, to step down. That would be the honorable thing to do. But Mr. Bush is not capable of doing those things for whatever reason. I don't know if he really needs that paycheck, even at his retirement age or advanced age. But if you can't do it yourself, if you can't, and sometimes, as human beings, we can't see for ourselves what's wrong with us. Oftentimes that's the case. And even in light of a situation like this, if you can't still deal with your situation, folks, the man pled guilty. First pled innocent, and then 2-3 days before his trial decided to plead guilty because he was going to once again question and try to fight. If the CCTV footage was not clear, thank God it was, he was going to try to argue his way out of this with good legal counsel. That tells me that you're really not holding yourself accountable for your actions. And that is sad. Very, very sad. And even after a guilty plea, Barbara Connolly, Juliana O'Connor Connolly, and Tara Rivers, as well as others, have remained silent. They have said nothing. Not a single word about his actions. So it is time that we hold not only Mr. Bush accountable, but his enablers need to be held accountable as well. Do you know that during the protests, 2 of his personal supporters drove by kind of heckling the protesters? And I was crossing the street when one of them drove by. "Oh, you're the instigator behind this?" That's what she says. Honey, Pat, go take several seats because I'm not business with you. I did not organize this, but I was there to support and I was there to cover it in the realm of media. And I don't really give a damn if you think I'm an instigator of this or not. Our people need to stand up for something. And I'm glad that there were people who were willing to organize and put this event together. Flashpoint says politicians put themselves and their political benefits above everything else. And that's what it boils down to, Flashpoint. So this comment came in, and I just wanted to read it again about Mr. Bush, that he has become intoxicated on his own exhaust fumes. And you know what happens when that happens? He's a disease, which, like cancer, we have no easy cure for because we've waited too long to treat it. Very sad. Leroy says, vote 2021, most of them out, especially him, too long. McKeever's another Donald Trump. It just saddens me to see his political career after 40 years really come down to this. I mean, how much worse can you get? Thank you, Irvelyn. Hi, Karen. Good morning. Mitzi is tuning in from North Side. Mitzi, are you still in quarantine or have you finally come out? Sherry, thank you so much. Good morning, my dear. Donna says, I was watching live when someone threatened to run over someone at the crosswalk. Yeah. You know, they say it half jokingly, but at the same time, you have to know that if these guys could do it and get away with it, they would have been out there beating all the protesters. And this is where now, let me say this much. I become extra disturbed at the people in this country who, for whatever reason, normally it's because they're getting their own pockets lined. Let us be very clear about that. Who will support these individuals despite their disgusting behavior. I'm going to give you an example. So a couple of days ago, I think it was on Monday. Well, yes, today's only Wednesday. I was at the courthouse, and when I was leaving, one of Mr. Bush's staunch supporters was at a bus. I spoke to this individual, and they said, oh, yeah, this whole thing with the protests. You were out there, blah, blah, blah. And I saw some Cubans out there protesting too. I was like, Cubans? Yeah, you interviewed them. I said, no. I said the Cuban guy was walking by and literally was leaving 30 seconds. And he stopped to take a photo. And he said to me, oh, Miss Sandra, do you remember me? I'm one of the Cuban refugees that you had done a video story on. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then he was talking just briefly about how the situation's ongoing, what's going on with his wife, blah, blah, blah. Not even 30 seconds. And the guy left and walked on. So this person now, who's a supporter of McKeeva Bush, claims that this guy was out there protesting with us, which was not the case. And that he was holding up a sign, and he's going to report that. He's going to tell Mr. Bush about that. And he's going to report that to Mr. Bush because he shouldn't have the right to protest in something like this because he's here as a refugee. Now, the irony of it is this person themselves is not even a Caymanian. They came here from a place in the world where they don't have very many freedoms either in terms of protesting and freedom of speech. But in that part of the world, they come with this mentality that they can say certain things and they can report on people as though that is going to make a difference, right? Oh, yes, report on this individual. Go tell Mr. Bush. What's Mr. Bush going to do? Oh, this is the old days when you can call immigration and complain about someone because they share a different opinion than you, and that's going to get them kicked off this island. But the very fact that someone would say that to me, again, another foreigner, oh, well, Cuban refugees shouldn't have the right to protest. They shouldn't have been out there. Factually, they weren't. The guy was not out there. But even if he was, what makes you think that you have the right to say who can protest and who can't protest? Oh, it only must be second or third generation Caymanians who can protest. All these white people and these foreigners, and they have papers and blah, blah, blah. Really? And for the record, the vast majority of people out there protesting are Caymanians. You might not know how they got their Cayman status, but they're Caymanians. So I am disgusted to hear this sort of thinking and to see it in action. People talking about running people over, calling people names. Quite frankly, I don't care if you think I'm an instigator or not. Your opinion of me, Pat, doesn't pay my bills, and so it doesn't really matter. Donna says, or is it or sad that it took 40 years to come to light? Well, nothing takes 40 years to come to light, Donna. What ends up happening is the signs are there all the time, and stuff comes to light all the time. But there's always been people, enablers is what we call them. And we see this in so many facets of life. Enablers who are willing to help cover up. So anybody who thinks that this would be a one-off situation after 40 years has got to be crazy. There have been story after story after story that I can tell you about. And I don't run in that circle where I would know all the stories. And I still hear them for years. And so, no, it is not a new situation. It's just that finally it's escalated to the point where there's no more covering up. This victim herself has said that she was constantly being verbally assaulted by him. And so on that night, when it turned to a grave physical assault, that this was it. She'd had enough. No more. And I think we, the people of this country, need to take the same position of this victim and say enough is enough. No more. Hashtag I support her. No more, folks. I mean, it's got to stop. It's just absolutely ridiculous. May the 26th, folks. That's election day. And all I can tell you is get out there and vote. Now, funny enough, I just had a quick look online. And you guys are not going to believe this. I was just having a look at Cayman Crosstalk. And there is sleepy Captain Eugene. Now, I like Captain Eugene. Would I ever vote for this man? Not in a million years. I would stay home first before voting for Captain Eugene. I would stay home and drink bread and water before wasting my time at the polls. Captain Eugene, I don't even know if he's ever been on Rooster before. Is this a first time appearance for him in the how many years that he's been in the Legislative Assembly? I've lost count. But I tell you what, there he is today, most likely talking about some Christmas party that he's hosting this weekend. I can't see the date on that, so I don't know if it's this weekend or when. But here's the joke. You know why he's doing this? Because Kathy Wilkes just had her party last weekend at Scholars Park. And so this is what they do. He couldn't hold a party any other time. Funny. The second Kathy has one. Oh, well, let me go and have one too. Reactive and slow like molasses. Folks, what has this man done? What meaningful contribution has he made in probably the 20 years that he has been there to the Legislative Assembly? Honestly. I often forget, and I'm not trying to pick on him. I'm just telling you folks the cold hard truth. I often forget that Captain Eugene is even an MP or an MLA previously, because his contributions, if there are any at all, because normally there isn't, he doesn't speak at anything, has been less than meaningful, to say the least. Lacking in so many ways. We're going to be hearing more from Kathy as the weeks go on. And we're going to put her to the test, because I'm not giving Kathy a walk in the park just because she's a woman. We want to put her to the test. What are you going to do differently? We want to hear from you. What are you bringing to the table? Now, I can tell you, I've already seen her bring a lot more to the table than Captain Eugene. That's for sure. We need to make better choices, folks. Good morning to Mona. MF says collaborators are just as guilty. And they are. They allow it to continue, just like this situation in court right now. That young man, Van J, was a collaborator. He was an enabler that allowed Skylar to do what she did. and her breach was a direct result, like the judge said, she would not have been there had it not been for him. Even if she came on island, if he didn't go pick her up and gave her a ride, she would not have been at that event that day. So Leroy reminds us of how low they can go to get your vote. So they're going to be throwing parties, which, by the way, Leroy, he says they're going to be buying you booze and everything else. Let me say this. There's a couple of things that have come to my attention that I'm going to speak on in relation to the election. But let me say this much, right? So one of the things that I find interesting, somebody commented on the live stream of Kathy's event on Saturday. And they're like, oh, now that it's election time, they're all coming out of the woodworks and they're holding events and blah, blah, blah. And they haven't been doing anything before. We're going to find out what Kathy's been up to because, like I said, we need to have a conversation with her. And we are planning a conversations with segment. But what I would say is this. People criticize, and I've heard this of like Alric as well. Alric gets out there and he's doing the most in his community. He's trying to help people. He's listening to people. He does a lot. And people say, oh, he's only doing this to get a vote, which I don't believe because Alric has also gone into the district of West Bay and other areas where he can't get a vote, and he's genuinely helping people. But for the sake of arguing, let us say that Kathy and Alric were only doing the things they do in order to get your vote. My question to you is, the incumbents who are in there now and who've been in there for eons doing nothing, the majority of the 4 years that they are in public office, they're not trying to even keep your vote. What do you have to say about them? They do the bare minimum the month before a general election. They're not doing anything during the remainder of the 4 years. In fact, whatever little booze or whatever they gave you, they're taking it back during the other 3.7. Let's give them the 3 months of campaigning. The other 3.7 months, they're in there getting the most, getting side contracts on the back of the people, doing this, doing that. Why aren't you saying anything about them? Why are you criticizing other people who are out there genuinely helping people? MF says real leaders are people who do not seek power, but have power thrust upon them. Good morning, Gadiel. Good morning, Andrew. Thank you so much for tuning in. So good to see you guys. Thank you to Kathy Phillips and Miss Charlene for your supportive comments on social media, which I've just seen as well. There's a lot going on, folks. There is a lot that's happening in this community. Just as an aside, CPR is actually considering taking their challenge, their legal challenge to the Privy Council. My apologies, which should be very, very interesting. Someone says to me that Mr. Bush cannot be helped. I was told that he kicked his someone or another in their stomach when they were pregnant. I likewise have heard that story. Someone just said to me, my apologies, that Cayman News Service is reporting that the bill has passed. And if you had done that, they would be nailing you to the cross right now. But how you know that, right? About now, sorry. So CNS got some wrong information going. And of course, we know that everybody else gets held to a different standard than we do. And we all make mistakes in the world of media, folks. Yes, sometimes we get it wrong. But it becomes a big deal, apparently, when CMR does it versus CNS. So I do chuckle at that comment. Thank you to the person who shared that. It's not yet passed, folks. Not yet passed. Aaron, let's switch gears slightly. Montemayor, 19 years old. I think this kid's going to go to jail. Now, if a 18-year-old visitor who breached quarantine once can go to jail, get a 4-month sentence, this kid, unfortunately for him, and it doesn't matter if he's Caymanian or not, has a jail sentence coming because, folks, I want to tell you today, there will be an article going up this morning that demonstrates how this young man has breached quarantine and more times, more occasions than we know. And he has exposed a lot of people. And the issue with Aaron is he is actually positive. This is a problem. Now, I want to talk about enablers as parents. Good morning, beautiful Debbie. How are you? Debbie's always on point with her makeup, folks. I gotta tell you, Debbie's beautiful. Now, as a parent, I cannot imagine having a child who just doesn't listen and who is a problem child. Actually, I can't imagine it because I have a 4-year-old. Yeah, she does it. And you have to stand your ground like I don't know what. If you have to say it 1,000,000 times, no, Gigi, you're going to brush your teeth. No, you can't have a cupcake for breakfast. We don't eat cupcakes for breakfast around here. It's like sometimes you feel like you're a broken record. But you know what? If you don't stand your ground, you run the potential of ending up having on your hands a 19-year-old kid who just doesn't listen to you, not at all. Sometimes, even with your best efforts, you will still have children who are going to do whatever the hell they want. But one thing you cannot do is enable or excuse their bad behavior. And we have got to be prepared on this program to call a spade a spade. Now, at the age of 19, this kid, and this is what I'm going to talk about, Carol, thank you for the comment, has put the lives of people at risk. And it is a very dangerous situation that he has created. Not only did he escape and go to the gym, but we know on Thursday night that this kid was seen by multiple people at Ocean Club. He has driven in cars, because he doesn't drive and he doesn't have a car, to get to these places. So he has had friends, strangers, pick him up and give him a ride. I personally believe that he knew, as well as his family, his mother, knew before he tested positive at our borders that he was positive. And a source actually said to me that that is why they were given Benadryl. I don't know what the heck Benadryl is supposed to do if you're positive, if you're COVID positives. Then the argument is, oh, it's a light strain and he's asymptomatic. I don't give a shit. If it's a light strain of COVID, a medium strain of COVID, or a heavy strain of COVID, you are positive and you know you are positive and you're going out there hugging people, handshaking with people, hanging out with people in a crowded nightclub environment. And I want to make sure that you guys are paying attention to what I'm about to tell you next. Sharing vapes with other people. You know, hookah, pipes, and vapes. In the best of circumstances, you shouldn't share those things with people. because you are taking in their saliva in your mouth. Huh. Right. And you're COVID positive. Walking around this community like nobody's business. Breaching quarantine on multiple occasions. If anybody deserves to go to jail, and I hate to say this because this young man would help me out during his summer breaks when he was a younger kid. He was actually a seemingly nice kid. I don't know what has happened. But if you cannot respect the quarantine provisions and you breach them in such a blatant manner, such a blatant fashion, Carol, the contact tracing on this one is going to be hard because there are a lot of people who now know, because of the article on Saturday that disclosed who he was, that they were in close contact with him, that they were sharing a vaping pipe, had him in the car and other such things. And they are now afraid to go and get tested. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. So those people know they were in contact with him and are refusing, because Public Works hasn't contacted them, but they know the real score and we know the real score. They are refusing to go in and get tested. So they could now be infected and nothing is going to happen. Talk about the possibility of community spread. And they could now start infecting people at their workplaces, in their homes, at church, and other aspects of the community. Darlene, you know that that's my saying, what a hot mess. This is beyond a hot mess. This kid needs to go to jail. The lack of concern on his part, going out there lying to people at Cotton Club that you've gotten out of, you spent your 2 weeks and you have gotten out of quarantine, has put the lives of multiple people at risk. You have, possibly introduced or reintroduced community spread in this country. And for your parent, going back to this concept of accountability and enablers, now the mom is putting this storyline out there that, he's got mental health issues. Well, ADHD people understand quite well right and wrong and when they're breaking the law. And I'm pretty sure that just like Skylar, who was only 18 years old, he would have received and signed that same document that said he understood legally what was required of him, and he understood legally what would happen if he breached the COVID provisions. And this is a kid who has breached it not once, but multiple times. Public health is still trying to trace now and figure this out. And they may never find everyone. So Amanda says if they're refusing to be tested, it should be forced upon them, because we cannot be on the road and not knowing. Police and COVID team should step in seriously in this case. Here's the problem with that, Amanda. You know how they tell you that ignorance is bliss? If they don't know, then they just don't know. Public health can only do so much. And I have said it before, and I'm going to say it again. This concept of contact tracing is a bit of a farce, because it relies upon the individual, aka in this case Aaron, being honest with the authorities. So it doesn't seem like Aaron told them he went to Cotton Club. This is other people coming forward saying, yo, I saw this dude at Cotton Club on Thursday night. I know he was there. He was in the parking lot talking to people outside. He went inside the club and the most. So if he hasn't told them that, and now here we are into the following week, a lot of people have probably forgotten what day last week they went to Cotton Club. Ooh, was it Tuesday or Thursday night I was out drinking? I had one too many. I can't even remember. There might be people there who've not read the news and they've not seen that Aaron is in the news for breaching COVID restrictions. And so they themselves don't even know that they were in contact with him. This is a very dangerous situation. So Amanda, Public Health, would have no way of knowing who was in contact with him. And I dare say, as a result of that, they cannot force anyone to do any testing. This is Aaron's house that he escaped from last time. And this is when they were allowing him to move back home under whatever new provisions. It's very irresponsible. And like I said, as a parent, I can understand without a doubt how his mother might be feeling right now. Like, my God, did I raise a son that could be so selfish? That was the word that the judge used yesterday to describe these other people who'd breached Skylar and VJ. And this is selfish. This is about, oh, I have to go to the gym and hang out. I have to go to a jet ski race to support my boyfriend. I have to, go smoke a vape and hang out at Cotton Club. Selfish and stupid. The stupidity of youth, I guess. But I hope that we are not prepared to excuse this behavior or to ask for anything less because he's a Caymanian or because he might suffer from behavioral issues. Things like ADHD, AFCF, whatever the heck we want to call things, do not diminish your responsibility when it comes to being legally held responsible for your actions. And in fact, as a parent, if I knew that my child had any sort of inability to process and understand what was going on, I would have insisted that they stay put for, my apologies, for wherever they are. For the Christmas holidays. Why are you allowing a child that you cannot control to re-enter the jurisdiction at a time like this? It would have been better, in fact, for you to go to wherever your kid is in university, you spend the time with him there, and then come back home after Christmas holidays and quarantine yourself. So now to try to use this reverse situation where you're like, well, he's got issues. That's why we need him to stay at home. So he went from a heavily guarded facility, because he escaped out of there, to being allowed to go home with one guard. Think about the logic of this situation. And a mother who doesn't even know when you open the window. That's a problem. No one has thought this through very carefully, I'm afraid. And so he needs to be held accountable. Anna, as parents, we do our best. You can't always hold parents accountable for their children's actions, especially once the children are adults. However, as a parent, you go wrong when you start to provide excuses for your children and their behavior. If you are smart enough to be in a university setting, you are smart enough to have the mental capacity to sign a document saying that you understand, then guess what? You are smart enough as my kid to know that when the shit hits the fan, you're going to be held accountable. And yes, I am your mother. So I would show up to court just like VJ's mom did yesterday, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to support you. And when they're hauling you off to jail, mama's going to be there to give you a hug. And mama's going to come and visit, as long as you're not arrested for the things that I don't stand for, molesting people's children, animals, and the elderly. Probably anything else. I'm going to come and visit you. I'm going to bring you home cooking. I'm going to tell you, kid, hang in there. That jail sentence seems long right now, but you're going to be okay. And you're going to learn a valuable lesson from this. As parents, it might break our hearts, but sometimes we've got to put our feet, not just one foot, both feet down when it comes to our children and hold them accountable. The lack of accountability with our children, I see it so much here in the Cayman Islands, is going to be our detriment. That's why the next generation they're doing the most, because the parents are not holding them accountable. And when they get to the age when the system then holds them accountable, starts throwing them in jail, we're like, wow, the system is against Caymanians and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Parents, do your job so that your kids don't have to be in the system. Louis says, good morning, everyone. Sandra going to jail for breaching quarantine. Is it a jailable offense even if it's not law? I'm not quite sure what I'm reading there, Louis. But breaching quarantine is a jailable offense. 2 people were sent to jail yesterday. I guess you missed that story, Louis. They were sent to jail for 4 months for breaching quarantine. So, yes, it's a jailable offense. The law says up to $10,000 or up to 2 years in jail. So they got 4 months. Leroy says better get tested. Well, I would suggest anyone who came in contact with him does that. MF says ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Well, that's for sure. Darlene is suggesting we get our mask back out. Zambula says he is as bad as the couple who have gone to prison. He went to the gym and clubbing, amongst other things. Zambula, gas station, all over the place this kid was. Anna says, if my breach quarantine or any loss that can harm others, I would call the police myself. In terms of her kids, absolutely. And in fact, I think in the last instance, my understanding is it was the mother who alerted the authorities that he'd gotten at again. So Anna says, I always tell my children that. Jonathan says, only mental health issue I can see is mama's excuses. Well, don't make them. That's what I would suggest, because we're hearing the excuses are being made behind the scenes. Amanda shares when other persons tested positive and they were not in quarantine, they'll know with who they were in contact with. The problem is it will catch a lot of people before we get to know. And the problem, Amanda, is at some point you almost give up on contact tracing because it doesn't make any sense. So if you have community spread again, trying to figure out, well, where did you get it from? At some point you just have to stop, because you would spend all of your time trying to contact trace and get nothing else done, basically, to try to contain it. Miss Janet says that he should know right from wrong. After all, he's in college, isn't he? Shame on him to put people at risk because he got off so easily. He won't feel accountable. And I kind of think that from moving him from a government facility to a home facility, again, making excuses. Oh, he needs his mama. He needs me to cook him these home cooked meals because he's so special and he's so different. Well, I'm afraid to tell you, mama, that the judge is probably not going to treat him any different at all when it comes to the sentence that's coming down his way. This is what I'm telling you, how we enable our kids. Thank you so much, Alice. Now, let me remind you what his sister said. The kid has a 10-year-old sister that seems to have more sense than he does. Because this is what the 10-year-old sister said. Listen very, very carefully.
Hello, if you're from Cayman, please stay. My brother has COVID and he was supposed to stay in quarantine, in isolation at the house for 2 weeks. He jumped out a window upstairs. I don't know how he did that, and he's not dead, but hopefully he's not dead, so that's good. Please get the lookout out of him. His name is Aaron Montemayor. Well, his full name is Aaron Ronaldo Montemayor. If you find any clues about him, please comment or DM me or something, cause he's going to jail, cause yeah, he escaped the isolation, and just please ask someone if they know him, like, please. Thank you.
So even the sister knows that he's going to jail. She says it. She's like, he's going to jail. Well, if the 10-year-old knows that jail is a real possibility, I certainly don't see why a 19-year-old, almost double her age, wouldn't know what the consequences are of his actions. In relation to the Cotton Club incident, well, the Cotton Club incident was Thursday night, and when we found out on Saturday morning that he'd breached on Friday night, initially we only heard about the Friday night. So it appears to me that there were more breaches than we know about, folks. And so that is very, very concerning. And I don't know why the kid is breaching quarantine. Carol wants to know, where is he now, and is his family isolating as he was at home with them? Yes, they're all isolating at home. This is what the kid was getting. Now explain this to me. Talk about how ungrateful children can be. You're getting all this home-cooked meals, omelets, looks like French toast, and all sorts of good mommy cooking. What are you breaching quarantine for? Sit your behind home. I heard quarantine food is not the best, but your mama's cooking you the best possible food there is. All you had to do is sit down and catch up on some good Netflix shows for 14 days and relax yourself. And you couldn't do that. Seriously. Wow. It is shocking. And so, Carol, it is peculiar that he was permitted to quarantine at the facility, and then his family was at home, because from the photos, I'm going to show you guys this again, of this family traveling back from overseas and starting quarantine, it is evident that they travel together. So was this a situation where the family initially decided to send him to a facility and then everybody else would quarantine at home? Because this is it. Parents, she says, at what age do you stop the Benadryl before flights? Mine are 19 and 10, and everyone good here. Yes, I am that parent. So here's a 10-year-old, as you can see, with her feet draped over her brother. He's sort of wearing his mask, although it looks like it's slightly pulled down under the nose. Say they came through Miami. That's the only place that Cayman Airways is flying out of right now. That's an hour and 15 minutes that he would have sat next to his sister. So I'm assuming that once he landed and came out and tested positive, everybody would have had to have quarantined, but it seems like he was initially sent to the government facility and everybody else went home. Why that happened that way, I do not know. I'm hoping that they were quarantined from day one at home. We know that the rules are if someone is intending to quarantine in your household, the entire household has to be prepared to quarantine. So my question becomes, just out of curiosity, why was he initially sent to a government facility and the rest of the family was able to go home? Were they all quarantining, but just at different facilities? It seems a bit odd. And then eventually, after his first breach, he was then moved back home, which seems like it's more of a reward to me than a punishment. He should have been made to stay in government quarantine under more strict guard protection, and this time make your mama pay for the government quarantine. Because remember, government is still paying for Caymanian, so they're still paying for him in public quarantine. If you breach public quarantine at government's expense, then you start to pay it at your own expense, is how I see it. That should be part of your punishment. That's all she got, folks. I have to jetty off to court. Couple of things. Good morning, Marshall, that I am watching. A few cases, and I'm also going to be completing and finalizing my stuff today as well. I heard, you guys know, I really try to not pay Carrie Tibbetts Horick Whitaker too much attention, because I honestly know Carrie not playing with a full deck. Not enough full in that drawer. So for me to even respond to her is really dumbing myself down. But sometimes people see it and they believe it, and that's the only reason why I respond. Carrie claims that I have 6 other charges or something. I don't know what Carrie is talking about, folks. As of today, I'll be done with everything that I've got in court and walking out of there. A free woman, all wrapped up. Carrie better be worried about the 2+ years that she spent in jail after stealing from other people. That's where her concern should be. You're the one, my sister, who knows all about jail life, not me. I ain't been there yet, and I'm not planning on going. So, Carrie, have yourself a good Christmas and stop obsessing about me. It's really becoming a bit uncomfortable, to be honest. Because I know you're not firing all cylinders, but it does make me worry that the only meaningful things you can try to discuss or post about is what's going on with me. You really shouldn't care that much. You need to worry about paying your own bills, maintaining a job, which you don't have. So get a job first, then maintain it and live your best life. You got enough stresses to worry about. Thank you so much. Oh. I just got a message here that I need to follow up on something with a prison inmate. Interesting. All right, good people. Yeah, so I'm going to get ready because I've got to go to court this morning. I'm going to go get ready and do that. Today is Wednesday, December the 16th. Can you believe that Christmas is literally a week and 2 days away? So next week, we're going to start our pre-Christmas celebrations here on CMR. So make sure you stay tuned for all of the excitement and fun and what we have in store for you guys. And yes, thank you guys so much for tuning in. So have a good one. I'll keep you updated on what is happening at court. There's that manslaughter trial, which is very, very long. I think the jury is 3 men and 4 women. that continues. And they had the forensic pathologist on day before yesterday. And it's very, very interesting. It is very, very interesting in terms of what's happening with the case. But we'll keep you guys updated in terms of some of the bigger things that is happening. Chef John, as you guys know, passed away. He was a legislator. And so they will be having a state organized funeral for him this weekend. Our flags have been flying at half-mast as a result of that, in case you missed that story. The fire service has updated their fleet. We can talk a little bit about that tomorrow, $3.5 million. And a couple other like holiday announcements and so on that we can discuss in the morning. So unfortunately, Danica was not able to join us this morning. She was having some internet connectivity issues, which is unfortunate. We do have a new regional correspondent. Danica is going to be engaged in some new projects for her. She actually runs her own, you guys might not know this, but she has her own website platform that she's been engaging in, and she does freelance work for other people as well. So coming into 2020, we will have another correspondent be spending a lot of time with us who actually has like 10 years of experience working for a major newspaper in both Jamaica and Bermuda. So she'll be able to bring a very interesting perspective about the region to us also. So we're going to try to keep the regional news going because I think it is really, really important to remember that we do not live in isolation, that we are all part of this world, and our neighbors, regionally especially, are part of us. You know, they make up a large portion of our population living on island as well. So it's always good to know what's going on. All right, folks, big shout out. Hope you guys enjoyed the show last night. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. And we will see you guys in the morning, God's willing. So have a good night. Good day. Not night. Good day. It's still day, folks. Get on it.
So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind. There the answer comes.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.